20 years after alien monsters invaded Earth, the final day of humanity's resistance arrived. As Earth faced its ultimate destruction, the last survivors prepared for battle. The Dragon Emperor, Kabuna, declared to the warriors that the only way to end the war was to eliminate the ruler of the alien species. He urged them to sacrifice their last moments for the sake of humanity. However, before they could act, the alien ruler spoke briefly before unleashing a devastating force. The ground shattered into pieces and countless people perished from a single attack. Our protagonist, Lee Do-hyuk, overwhelmed with fury, cursed the ruler and prepared to charge forward to kill it, but Kabuna stopped him. That was when Do-hyuk noticed Kabuna's severed arm, but Kabuna dismissed his concern, insisting that he was fine. He explained that defeating the ruler was impossible with humanity's current strength and that their only option now was to resort to a final method. A woman then stepped forward and revealed the Stone of Space-Time Regression, humanity's last hope, discovered at the end of the 20-year war. She reminded them that the stone's power allowed one person to regress to the past. Kabuna explained that only one individual could use it, and if there was anyone who had to go back, it had to be Lee Do-hyuk. He reminded Do-hyuk of his title as the Genius Hunter of the Century, assuring him that he was capable of succeeding. The woman placed the stone in his hands, emphasizing that the fate of 8 billion people depended on him. Though reluctant, Do-hyuk had no choice but to accept. Activating the stone, he made a promise. If he succeeded, they would meet again with smiles. As the stone unleashed a powerful energy, a blinding light engulfed him. The woman watched his lifeless body and expressed a strange sense of relief. Kabuna responded that, with Do-hyuk now carrying the burden alone, their role had ended. However, the woman reminded them that they still had unfinished business, the alien ruler. She insisted that they should fight one last time, and the others agreed. With determination, they launched forward for one final struggle. In a peaceful city, Lee Do-hyuk awoke to the blaring sound of an alarm clock. Jolting upright in shock, he tumbled out of bed. As he opened his eyes, confusion overwhelmed him. The surroundings felt familiar. Thoughts raced through his mind as he questioned whether he had returned to his old apartment and whether he had succeeded. Relief flooded him as he realized that he had returned to the optimal moment in time. He calculated that 7 months remained before the alien invasion. Until then, he needed to strengthen his frail body and stockpile supplies in preparation for the catastrophe. Determined, he grabbed his coat, aware that the lives of 8 billion people rested on his shoulders. Stepping onto the street, he vowed to awaken at the earliest possible moment during the first outbreak. Until then, rigorous training would be necessary to ensure that his body could withstand the awakening process. 7 months later, at Bukhansan, standing at the designated location, Do-hyuk waited, knowing that the critical moment had arrived. In precisely 1 minute and 30 seconds, a wormhole would form in Bukhansan. Though his body remained far from its peak condition, he had at least met the minimum physical requirements. In 1 minute, a wormhole would open in the rock ahead, and with its creation, an enormous amount of mana would pour out. Like a baptism, it would forcibly open the human body and imprint the awakening circuit, a pathway for mana, onto it. Yet the real problem was the alien species vanguard that would appear alongside the wormhole. He recalled that in Korea's case, the first wave of alien creatures consisted of giant ants and quad cockroaches. In his prime, they had been nothing more than insignificant obstacles. Yet for newly awakened hunters, even 5 or 6 would struggle to defeat just one. Despite this, Do-hyuk remained confident that his experience would allow him to overcome them. He began the countdown. At the final second, he positioned himself and prepared for the wormhole's emergence. Shouting in anticipation, he braced for impact, only to be met with silence. The only sound that reached his ears was the call of a nearby bird. Confusion set in as he realized that nothing had happened. He considered the possibility of a 10-second margin of error and decided to wait a little longer. 10 hours later. Night had fallen and rain poured down as Do-hyuk remained in position. He questioned what had gone wrong. 10 hours had passed, and still, the wormhole had not appeared. Considering the possibility of a miscalculation, he decided to return the following day. However, tomorrow turned into a week, and still, nothing happened. An elderly man passing by noticed him and curiously asked what he was doing there. His companion, however, dismissed the question, remarking that the young man looked unstable and suggesting they continue on their way. A month later, Lee Do-hyuk was still sitting in Bukhansan. Over time, people began taking pictures with him, recognizing him as the famous Bukhansan statue man. As half a year passed, news outlets reported on him, describing him as an ascetic who had been meditating at Bukhansan for 6 months. Parents of students even began making wishes in his presence. One day, his younger sibling recognized him on TV and asked their mother if the man in the news was really her brother. Shocked, their mother demanded an explanation, wondering what on earth he was doing there. The world remained unexpectedly peaceful, and after a long wait of 3 more months, Lee Do-hyuk, once known as humanity's savior, became a day laborer. Titles such as Lone Wolf, Demon Fighter, Copy Ninja X Kashi, Genius, first dominant species slayer, god of war, and one of the 9 heroes had once been used to describe him during his 10 years as a hunter. And finally, savior. Yet, despite all of that, he now found himself labeled a mere day laborer. The realization embarrassed him, making him wonder how he could ever face the others. For the past 6 months, no matter how long he waited, the outbreak never happened. There were no alien species, no awakened individuals with supernatural abilities, nothing. This meant that none of it existed in the world he now found himself in. In the end, Do-hyuk had to accept that this was a different Earth from the one he knew. Although the concepts of the multiverse and parallel worlds had been widely discussed, he never imagined he would experience it firsthand. Still, he acknowledged that the lack of an outbreak was ultimately a good thing for the people of this world. Even if it meant that all of his efforts, along with those of the resistance group, had been in vain, this was how things should be. Taking a deep breath, he felt the peaceful air around him and thought that perhaps he should take the time to enjoy that peace for a while. However, just as he embraced the tranquility, his phone vibrated with a message. Checking it, he saw a notification from the bank stating that his loan payment of 2,138,465 won was scheduled for withdrawal on July 30th. Moments later, another message from Peace Capital informed him that his loan was overdue. Before he could process it, yet another notification from a different bank arrived, leaving him speechless. Later at home, his younger sister, Lee Jian, called him over and told him to sit down with her for a moment. Annoyed, he asked what it was now, but Jian fired back, demanding to know what he had been up to lately. She questioned where he had been running off to all the time despite being unemployed. Recalling his actions over the past year, she reminded him that he had been buying gas masks and all sorts of strange supplies. Then, with suspicion in her voice, she asked if he had gotten involved in a pyramid scheme. Frustrated, she shouted that a year ago he had suddenly left the Gosiwon, claiming the world was ending, and had gone on to hoard tens of millions of won worth of supplies in the basement. She demanded to know if he had any idea how worried their mother had been. Do-hyuk remained silent, unable to argue. Guilt weighed on him. He truly hadn't known that the world would end so peacefully either. The scene shifts to the past. Kabuna had instructed him to borrow as much money as he could, from any source available. When Do-hyuk asked why, Kabuna simply told him that it didn't matter whether it was from banks or loan sharks. He needed to secure every possible resource to prepare for the outbreak. When Do-hyuk asked what would happen next, Kabuna had dismissed the concern, stating that once the outbreak occurred, the world would be finished. No one in their right mind would come to collect debts in a world that no longer existed. That was the plan. But now, with the world still standing and showing no signs of an impending apocalypse, Do-hyuk realized that he was stuck with all the money he had borrowed. Accepting his fate, he teared up as Jian continued to scold him, demanding to know what exactly he was so proud of. Jian then voiced her suspicion that he had been doing day labor to pay off what she still believed were pyramid scheme products. Sighing, she told him that she would pay him a salary if he helped her with her internet broadcasting instead. Confused, he asked if she was referring to the strange thing she wore on her head, to which she nodded. She explained that she needed to beat a 2-player game and required his assistance. He hesitated, telling her that he had never done anything like it before, but she reassured him, saying that he would adapt quickly. After all, he had always been good at sports and other physical activities. Since he was the only one she could ask, she insisted that he help her. Still skeptical, he asked how much she even made from internet broadcasting. Nonchalantly, she replied that she earned 1,500. Shocked, he demanded clarification, and she proudly declared that after just a few months of streaming, she was now making 15 million won per month. Without hesitation, she offered to give him half of her earnings. A short while later, Jian asked if he was ready to dive into the game, and he responded affirmatively. And so, for the time being, Lee Do-hyuk, the former savior of humanity, decided to become his younger sister's assistant. With excitement, Jian shouted that they should dive in, and together they entered It Kills 2, a game set in a world where they would have to farm, fight enemies, and survive the ultra-difficult adventure horror mode known as the Newbie's Grave. As the system activated, a notification appeared, confirming that they had arrived and that the game had begun. As they moved forward, John reminded Do-hyuk to stay close while their viewers continued to flood the chat with comments. Do-hyuk glanced around, wondering if the atmosphere was supposed to be frightening. Instead, he found himself thinking that the house in front of them looked like the perfect place for a good night's sleep. Jian clung tightly to his arm, trembling, and urged him to proceed cautiously. He agreed, advising her to follow carefully. As they slowly entered the house, the viewers were impressed by how casually they walked in, treating the ominous setting as if it were nothing. Do-hyuk stepped onto the first stair when a system message suddenly appeared in front of him. The message explained that, after receiving a letter from his missing ex-wife, his character, along with his current wife, had arrived at the abandoned house where the ex-wife had disappeared. Without paying much attention, he swiped the message away, thinking it was just an unnecessary distraction. Jian immediately grabbed his face and hair in frustration, questioning whether he had lost his mind. She scolded him for skipping the tutorial, especially in a game that was already difficult. He quickly apologized, explaining that the message had been in the way, so he had clicked without thinking. Jian, still frustrated, blamed herself for trusting a beginner, causing the viewers to burst into laughter. Turning back to the audience, she asked for tips, admitting that she hadn't checked a single guide. Some viewers jokingly suggested that the best way to learn was by dying, while others provided more practical advice, telling them to farm for weapons, search for clues, use flashbangs, and remember that only a few weapons worked against the boss, making escape their best option. Several users warned her that the difficulty setting was crucial and emphasized that no matter what, they should avoid choosing reality mode. Jian's expression turned pale as the system displayed a new message confirming that difficulty selection had been completed. The game had been set to reality mode. Panic set in as she immediately pinned Do-hyuk against the door, demanding to know what he had done and why this was happening to her. He explained that all he had done was touch the doorknob to check if it was unlocked when another strange prompt appeared. The chat erupted with laughter, with viewers joking that their dynamic resembled a sitcom. Others commented on how entertaining it was to watch Repair Chu, Jian's streaming nickname, struggling through the game. Meanwhile, Jian let out a horrified scream upon realizing that over 1,000,000 won was now riding on their success. The system displayed 2 mission requests from viewers. One from a user named Lipshu, offering a 1,000,000 won reward for clearing reality mode in 3 attempts within the remaining 48 minutes, and another from Guardian Chu, offering 500,000 won for simply clearing the mode, with no limit on attempts. Jian quickly regained her composure and declared that they had no choice but to proceed. Do-hyuk confidently agreed, stating that despair was a luxury they couldn't afford. Viewers laughed, commenting that money was the best cure for despair. Without hesitation, he opened the door. A dead body suddenly fell, hanging directly in front of them. Jian let out a terrified scream. One of the viewers advised them to check behind the corpse, noting that there should be a hand axe and a pistol hidden there. Since Jian was too frightened to move, Do-hyuk followed the tip and retrieved the weapons. Without much thought, he tossed the pistol to Jian, only to be met with immediate regret as she panicked and protested that she was terrible with guns. Amused, he questioned whether she was more comfortable with a hand axe and informed her that she would need to face enemies directly. Turning away in frustration, she muttered that her dream had always been to become a gunslinger. Before the conversation could continue, a neck hugger lunged at them. Jian screamed in horror, instinctively covering herself. Do-hyuk reacted instantly, leaping forward and grabbing the creature's arm mid-attack. Viewers were stunned, unable to believe that he had just blocked the neck hugger's strike with a single hand. In one swift motion, he swung the axe, severing the creature's arm. A shriek of pain echoed through the house as he immediately shoved the severed limb into its mouth. Before they could recover, more neck huggers emerged, rushing toward them all at once. Do-hyuk simply narrowed his eyes. The moment they drew close, he lunged forward, slashing through them at an incredible speed. In mere moments, the creatures had been cut into pieces, their bodies collapsing to the ground in an instant. The chat exploded with reactions. Some viewers called his performance insane, while others questioned whether they had really just witnessed it happen in real time. Do-hyuk exhaled in relief and turned to check on Jian, expecting her to still be terrified. Without warning, she raised the pistol and shot him. The system immediately displayed a message stating that the mission had failed because Lee Do-hyuk had died. A prompt appeared, asking whether they would like to restart. Jian rushed to his side, frantically apologizing and insisting that it had been a mistake. A viewer with the username Military Middle School Girl donated 1,001. In a high-class apartment, Black Orcs, a horror game specialist streamer, shouted to his viewers that he couldn't believe Do-hyuk had taken down a neck hugger that easily. He told his supporters that even in reality mode, his limit was 2 neck huggers, but Do-hyuk had taken down 4 with just a hand axe. He then asked what Do-hyuk's name was again. Meanwhile, in Fun Dive, Do-hyuk and Jian respawned in front of the house. Jian apologized to him, swearing that it had really been a mistake, but he remained silent in anger while the viewers couldn't stop laughing, noticing that he was clearly pissed. After a moment, he told Jian that it was fine, and that it had been his mistake, which touched her. However, he then angrily added that he should have never given a gun to an idiot like her, making her apologize again and swear that she would do better next time. He told her that there would be no next time for her, and ordered her to follow him because they would move quickly. She agreed, but muttered that they should see how well he did without her. A few minutes later, he slashed through the neck huggers again without breaking a sweat, all while holding Jian in one arm. The viewers laughed when they noticed that Jian wasn't moving, which made him even faster. He then proudly asked if she had seen it and told her that he could handle fights alone, so they would divide roles for the next part. She was confused, but he simply told her that he would handle firearms, melee combat, item farming, and scouting while twisting the door open. She asked what she was supposed to do, and he told her to shut up and cheer. She cursed at him angrily and reminded him that it was her game, but he ignored her and simply told her that they were moving in now. The viewers laughed even more, realizing that this was a forced bus ride. He opened the door and was immediately met with Brute, the mid-boss of It Kills 2. Jian, startled, accidentally pushed him forward in fear and shouted that it was there. He was forced forward just as Brute launched toward them. He shouted at her, calling her an idiot, but she only apologized while the viewers laughed, thinking it was another team kill. Fortunately, he managed to dodge Brute's attack and knock off its balance while shouting for it to go down. When it collapsed, he immediately jumped behind it, launched his axe, and stabbed it in the head, knowing that compared to the monsters he had fought before, this was nothing. The viewers questioned why he was treating Brute like a chew toy, pointing out that its thick skin should be impenetrable by a hand axe. As Brute raised its hand to grab him, he shouted that if it didn't work, he would make it work. He then kicked the axe deeper into its head, piercing straight through its skull and out from its neck. The viewers couldn't believe that he had taken it down. Brute collapsed to the ground, dead. User Lipshu donated 1,000 won and asked if they had really seen that correctly. Jian, still in shock, stammered that she didn't know. Do-hyuk read through the comments and saw that many viewers were saying this was the first time they had ever seen someone kill Brute with a hand axe. Some claimed that Brute wasn't even supposed to be killable that way. He asked why not, stating that it hadn't been that difficult. The viewers responded that normally, only veteran players could kill it after stacking firepower and suffering through sheer desperation. One of the viewers then questioned whether he was really a newbie. Jean responded that her brother was, in fact, a newbie. Another viewer then challenged them to prove it by showing their status window. Jean agreed and told him to open it. He followed the request and displayed his play history. The data showed that he had only played for 6.6 hours, with a total status of 134. Everyone was shocked when they confirmed that he hadn't even played for a full day. They then noticed his detailed stats and were amazed, realizing that most new players, even professional athletes, started with around 125, while 140 was considered the human limit. His detailed stats all ranked within the top 0.01%, surprising the viewers even more. Some began questioning if he was a cyborg. He smiled, realizing that all the training to prepare for the apocalypse was finally paying off. Meanwhile, Jian teared up beside him, wondering how much they had worked him in that scam group, and how a body could even reach that level. She then burst into loud cries, asking if he had even been eating properly while he was there. Surprised, he asked what was wrong with her, but she only swore that from now on, she would treat him well. The system then displayed a notification showing that Black Orc had donated 10,000 won, with a comment saying that what he had just witnessed was insane. Jian, startled by the name, asked if it was really Black Orc, the famous horror streamer. Other viewers were equally amazed, commenting that the first person to unlock a hidden route in It Kills 2 had just appeared. Do-hyuk, confused, asked what they meant by a hidden route. One viewer explained that normally brutes were supposed to capture the player and move the story forward, but Black Orc had been the first to kill one, unlocking a hidden path. However, it had taken him 7 brutal attempts using every weapon available. Do-hyuk responded that not everyone was good at games, then asked if he was right in assuming that if someone wasn't good at the game, something like that could happen. The viewers laughed, commenting on how he was the only person who could get away with calling Black Orc bad at games. On the other hand, Black Orc, who was watching the stream, let out an awkward laugh at Do-hyuk's words. He couldn't believe that someone who had never played this game before, or even used Full Dive VR, had taken down a brute with nothing but a hand axe. Originally, he had planned to watch for a bit and then log off, but he decided he might as well turn this into content. Black Orc then donated another 10,000 won and asked if he could give them a mission if it wasn't too much trouble, mentioning that he was just trying to have some fun while streaming. Jian asked what kind of mission it was, and Black Orc proposed a 1 million won challenge to clear the game using only a hand axe, with no other weapons allowed, and a time limit of 48 minutes. He also added that he would be streaming it legally. Jian, overwhelmed with excitement, immediately agreed. Do-hyuk agreed just as quickly, but the viewers expressed concern. They pointed out that clearing the game with only a hand axe would be extremely difficult. The game didn't just have humanoid enemies. There were all sorts of monsters, which meant that attempting to defeat them all with such a small weapon was essentially the same as saying it was impossible to clear the game at all. Black Orc reconsidered and admitted that the hand axe restriction might be too much. He asked if they would prefer a crowbar or a chainsaw instead. Before he could finalize the change, Do-hyuk clicked yes, and the system immediately announced that the mission was successful. Black Orc followed up by donating 1 million won. Jian, furious, demanded to know what he had just done. Stammering, he explained that it was a mistake. He had meant to press the accept button for the hand axe mission but had accidentally hit the success button instead. Without hesitating, he grabbed Jian and rushed forward, kicking open the next door. Shouting with determination, he declared that now that it had come to this, he was going to complete the mission no matter what. Jian, panicking, yelled at him to stop his madness. They soon encountered a Grande, the second mid-boss monster, known for its terrifying speed and ability to rip players apart. Black Orc knew that a Grande's chainsaw arm inflicted near-fatal damage upon a single hit, and that its attack patterns were incredibly fast. Normally, one teammate would provide suppression fire to stun it while the rest of the team targeted its weak points. This balance of attack and aggro was the official Regressed strategy, making a two-player party mandatory for survival. Black Orc donated 10,000 won again, asking what kind of insane playstyle he was witnessing. Do Hyuk swung his hand axe and slashed at Regressed's feet, making it scream in pain. He then turned to face it again, wondering what a set strategy even meant. Back in his time, if they had no weapons, they fought with their bare teeth, and if no method existed, they created one, no matter what it took. Among all those hunters, he had been the best at killing monsters. He questioned what value a so-called official strategy could possibly have when it came from just 5 years of full dive VR history. Compared to the grand monster strategies he had built over 20 years of war, it was nothing more than a child's playbook. Regressed turned back toward him, revving its chainsaw arm before swinging it down at him. Do Hyuk barely dodged in time, bending his body at the last moment to avoid the strike. Aware of its speed, he quickly countered by slashing its foot again, knowing that the key was to destroy the source of its mobility. With precision, he delivered a powerful kick to Regressed, determined to take away its balance and speed. He knew that once those were gone, the final move would be to strike a humanoid monster's ultimate weak spot, the neck. Regressed let out a furious scream but struggled to stand. Seeing his opportunity, Do Hyuk dashed forward, swinging his axe straight at its neck. However, he was caught off guard when Regressed managed to block the attack with its arm, causing the axe to get stuck. Before he could react, Regressed furiously swung its chainsaw arm at him. Jian, watching in panic, called out his name in fear. He managed to jump in time, avoiding Regressed's attack. He then pinned Regressed's chainsaw with a powerful kick, but instead, he was thrown across the room and slammed into the wall, unable to break through Regressed's defense. Despite this, he remained calm, simply remarking that Regressed was a bit tricky. A moment later, he successfully killed Regressed using only a hand axe. Jian excitedly shouted that they had done it and that they had won, while the viewers commented that it was hilarious how he had called Regressed a bit tricky, right before defeating it in a one-shot kill. Chu then donated 10,000 won, asking how he had done it. He casually replied that it was easier than they thought and explained that by analyzing the direction of Regressed's pivot foot and the movement of its muscles, then targeting the leg that stopped to concentrate power during an attack, he was able to shut down Regressed's speed. He added that by reading the muscle movements of the leading shoulder and the texture of the arm muscles before the attack, they could predict the timing and direction of the strike. After that, they would only need to dodge, just as he had done earlier, and land a powerful counterattack. The viewers laughed at his explanation, telling him that such precise movements were something only he could pull off. He simply responded that it was easy, leading the viewers to joke that if he could do that, he might as well be able to dodge bullets too. He casually replied that dodging bullets was even easier since gunfire moved in a straight line, so they could avoid it by watching the muzzle direction. If dodging wasn't possible, he suggested that they should just block it with an axe, causing the viewers to burst into laughter, commenting that even if he explained it, only he would be capable of pulling it off. Jian then pointed to the side, mentioning that there was a way down. He was surprised and told her to wait for a second, which made the viewers ask if it was time for rush. As they walked down the stairs, he informed the viewers that there wasn't much time, so he would explain the details as they went. However, Jian suddenly pointed out another axe, making the viewers remember that defeating Regressed rewarded players with a submachine gun and a hand axe. He proudly told everyone that back in the day, he had used dual axes to take down multiple monsters. Before he could finish his thought, Jian suddenly screamed for him to look behind him. When he turned, he saw a swarm of enhanced zombies rushing toward them. The zombies lunged at them, but he quickly reacted, blocking one of them with his axe before swinging his weapon and decapitating it. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, dual hand axes in motion, cutting off the zombies' heads one after another. The viewers questioned if the supposedly enhanced zombies were actually made of tofu, wondering why they were getting sliced apart so easily. He dodged a zombie's sharp claws while replying that it wasn't as hard as they thought, reminding them that all they needed to do was dodge with a simple swish, gather all their strength, and strike the weak point of a humanoid, the neck. He demonstrated by swiftly slashing through another zombie's neck. As more zombies surrounded him, the viewers became concerned, questioning what was happening with the difficulty. Normally, there were only about 10 of them, yet dozens of zombies were appearing. Some speculated that even Do Hyuk might struggle. Still focused on fighting, he continued cutting off the zombies' heads and casually asked the viewers if they wanted him to put in a little more effort. Without waiting for an answer, he opens his arms and spins non-stop, effortlessly decapitating the enemies. The viewers watched in shock, asking if he was using whirlwind. After wiping out the entire swarm, he suddenly rushed to the side and vomited from dizziness. The viewers burst into laughter, teasing him for getting motion sickness from his own whirlwind attack. One viewer jokingly told him to stop messing around in an action game and just play Rise of Valhalla instead. Confused, he asked if that was a different game. Before the conversation could continue, Jian suddenly shouted for him to look at something she was holding. She explained that she had found a clue about the serum needed to counter the monster crisis. She added that it was difficult to read due to the bloodstains, but according to the notebook, the cause of all the mutations, from neck huggers to zombies, was a type of mutant strain. She then asked if he remembered the trailer near the house they had seen earlier, to which he replied that he did. She explained that according to the notes, the serum capable of curing the mutant strain was located inside that trailer. If they retrieved it and dispersed it through the mansion's sprinkler system, the mutants would all weaken at once. He then read a comment mentioning that without the serum, the game's difficulty would spike dramatically starting from the next boss, making things extremely tough. However, he remained unfazed, remarking that it didn't seem that hard to him. He then casually asked if they should just skip it, which made Jian panic and question why he would even consider that, worrying about what would happen if he failed. He simply responded that going all the way there was a hassle. Black Orc then requested a 100,001 mission, challenging them to clear the next boss without using the serum within a 48-minute time limit. Do Hyuk confidently accepted, stating that if that was what Black Orc wanted, he would do it. Jian responded by saying that she expected nothing less from an educated person, making the viewers laugh and call them the slaves of capitalism, the sibling duo that gets serious when money is involved. Suddenly, the floor cracked beneath them, leading Do Hyuk to assume they were supposed to go down. Excitedly, he told Jian to hop onto his back, which she did while trying to calm him down. Ignoring her, he jumped down and landed in the water below, causing Jian to scream in fear. The system displayed a message indicating that they had arrived at the sewer labyrinth. Jian, covering her nose, asked what the terrible smell was, but Do Hyuk remained silent, lost in memories. The scent reminded him of the time he had practically lived in underground sewers to escape the alien species. Jian, disgusted, suddenly screamed upon spotting a rat. Do Hyuk, on the other hand, felt relieved to see a sewer rat again, thinking that if he made soup with it, the broth would be amazing. However, his thoughts were interrupted when a group of giant rats appeared. Instead of reacting with fear, he dashed forward excitedly, thinking that giant rats meant even better meat. The sudden aggression shocked the rats. Effortlessly, he chopped the giant rats into pieces, proudly announcing that he had obtained the most delicious rat hind leg. He shouted bon appetit and prepared to bite into the raw giant rat meat when Jian screamed in horror, calling him a crazy bastard and demanding to know why he was about to eat it. Before he could take a bite, a massive stone suddenly flew in and knocked the meat from his hand. Turning his gaze, he saw the Chaos, a late-game boss creature known for its tentacle arms and powerful regeneration. One of the viewers questioned what the hell it was and why it had appeared so early when they weren't even in a boss room. Jian, stuttering, asked why there were two bosses and shouted at Do Hyuk to run. The viewers began wondering if the game was bugged or if the difficulty settings were broken. While everyone else panicked, Do Hyuk shouted in despair over his lost rat meat, frantically searching for it in the dirty water. He continued lamenting, saying that he had been looking forward to eating junk food for once. Suddenly, his expression darkened as he angrily turned to the bosses, demanding to know how they dared to take his rat meat. He declared that he wouldn't let it slide. The viewers questioned whether he was seriously mad about not being able to eat rat meat and jokingly asked if he was part of the Silmito Special Forces or something. One of the monsters attempted to squeeze him to death, but he jumped away just in time to dodge the attack. Jian shouted that this was getting to be too much, complaining that strange bug-like things kept happening to them. Meanwhile, Black Orc, who was watching, commented that in reality mode, the game's initial difficulty was determined based on the player's stats. Since Do Hyuk's stats had far surpassed the game's limit rank, it was likely the reason for the extreme difficulty spikes. Black Orc then donated 1,001, remarking that this was probably why such things kept happening. At that moment, one of the bosses landed a punch, sending Do Hyuk slamming into the wall. The viewers questioned whether throwing in two chaos creatures at once was a bit too much. As they debated, one of the bosses suddenly launched its tentacles at Do Hyuk. Fortunately, he managed to jump away just in time, shouting that he was fine. Without hesitation, he dashed forward and began slicing through the boss's tentacles, hacking them into pieces while declaring that now the fight was getting interesting. One of the viewers commented that Do Hyuk's mindset was insane, but warned that it was still too early to lower their guard. The chaos creature had incredible regeneration, meaning small damage healed instantly. Worse, the moment it was attacked, it would begin a poison gas attack. As predicted, Chaos immediately released a cloud of poison gas. Jian, caught in the blast as well, screamed that they were poisoned and that they only had 10 minutes left. The Chaos then attempted to punch him, but he dodged. He quickly slashed off its hand and cut through its leg while shouting that if it kept regenerating, they just had to keep smashing it until it couldn't regenerate anymore. He then severed its head, but it instantly regenerated its head, hand, and leg at the same time with incredible speed. The creature suddenly leaped in Jian's direction, making her scream in fear, while the other Chaos launched its tentacles at him. He glanced at the comments and read that Chaos had infinite regeneration unless its heart was destroyed, making him wonder if the heart was its core. The chaos attempted to grab him, but he easily sliced off its arm. He then follows up with a powerful kick to its head, forcing it down. Without giving it a chance, he slashed open its chest and pinned it to the ground, causing it to scream in pain. Without a second thought, he forcefully ripped its chest open with his hands, shouting that if the heart was its weakness, he would tear it out and crush it himself. The chaos let out a piercing scream. The other chaos, hearing its companion's cry, immediately jumped toward them and launched its sharp tentacles. The attack pierced through, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Jian called out to her brother in fear, but it wasn't Do-hyuk who had been struck. He had managed to jump away just in time, making the chaos kill its own kind. The viewers couldn't believe what had just happened, questioning if he had planned from the start to lure its attack into destroying the other one's heart. The remaining chaos, enraged, rushed at him, but he leaped into the air and stabbed his axe straight into its head. He then swung his axe again, striking its chest and piercing through its heart, instantly killing it. The comment section broke as viewers flooded it with messages of shock and amazement. Jian was just as stunned, unable to believe that her brother was this strong. The system then displayed a notification that the Chaos mission had been successfully cleared. Jian, now fully energized, excitedly told the viewers that after witnessing such a legendary match, they should feel like giving something in return. The viewers, knowing that it was time for the donation declaration, immediately began sending in donations. Almost all of them contributed large amounts, still overwhelmed by the incredible battle they had just witnessed. Jian, seeing the donations pouring in, thanked the viewers and mentioned that she would use the money to buy meat with her brother. Meanwhile, Do-hyuk stood behind her, equally amazed, staring at the screen in disbelief as he processed the sheer amount of donations. He found himself wondering if all of it was really money and how much they had actually made today. Jian then turned to him and asked what he wanted to do next, suggesting that they continue playing. He replied that they had already been at it for 8 hours, so they should stop there. The viewers immediately protested, asking if they were really abandoning them. They called him cruel and insisted that he should continue for at least 18 hours. However, he simply responded that he was starting to lose focus. Since it was his first time in VR, he was also feeling a bit dizzy. Realizing they had no choice, the viewers reluctantly accepted it, telling him that next time they should go for a longer session. He agreed, assuring them that he would be back to finish the rest. Jian then said goodbye to the viewers, and they both logged out, leaving the audience still commenting and desperately trying to stop them. Meanwhile, Black Orc sat in silence, still unable to believe what he had just watched. He questioned who this person even was. As he thought about it more, he began to wonder what it would be like if Do-hyuk played other games. If his skills in It Kills 2 were already this insane, then any game he played was guaranteed to be a hit, an absolute blockbuster for sure. Without wasting another second, Black Orc stood up, knowing there was no time to hesitate. Do-hyuk was drawing all the attention toward him,